Hello, everyone. Welcome to another one of our Resolve use case series. In this series, I've had the pleasure to talk to our own internal subject matter experts about the 7 automations for highly effective organizations. We've been going over some automations, and we've also been doing product demonstrations to help you kind of envision what that automation could look like. What we've covered in the past few weeks, we've done employee onboarding, offboarding, we've done password reset, resource provisioning, and last week we did an example for incident response, which was when your web application goes down, how can your automation automatically fix the problem? Today, we're here to talk to you about another example of incident response. And this one is for how do you respond to a low disk space error? With that, I want to welcome our SMEs for this session. I have Gabby and Derek here with me. Gabby, do you want to introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure, glad to be here again. So I'm Gabby, I'm Chief Strategy Officer for Resolve. Prior to joining Resolve, I was a co-founder and CEO of a Yale company that focused on IT process automation. Prior to that, I ran IT operations 24/7, command and control room, and literally I was really spending my time on disk space issues. So happy and excited to tell more about that.
So I guess it's fair to say you have firsthand experience with all of this, all of these this topic that we're talking about. Derek,
Indeed.
Derek, I'm happy to welcome you back. Do you want to do a quick introduction for our audience?
Sure. Thank you, Brenda. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining and watching. My name is Derek Pascarella, located here in New York, and I head up sales engineering in the Americas, North America, to be specific. And I work with our customers and potential customers every day to show them the power of the Resolve automation solution. And in today's demonstration, I'll be doing just that for all of you. So thanks for having me on, Brenda.
Thank you, Derek, and Gabby for kind of joining us and to discuss this topic. Gabby, I have a couple of questions for you. So I wanted to, we touched on this topic last week when we talked about the importance of speed when responding to outages, right? Today, I want to touch on another challenge in the IT world, which is the explosion of data. Cloud and containers and DevOps, all of these initiatives have kind of resulted in an explosive increase in telemetry, which means like alerts and events. And IT is really challenged to kind of triage and go through all of these events in time. How can automation help with that?
Yeah, correct. Obviously, this is more than we can handle ourselves, right? Even if we had like unlimited human resources, we can't really process the data without the help of analytics or machine learning. And even if we could, it would take us so much time to analyze and figure out what happened. And by the time that we figure this out, it would be too late for us to take an action. Hence why I mentioned the speed, because it's super important. This is where I believe, observability tools, AIOps, and automation can really work together and bring something unique, which none of the tools individually as a standalone can do by itself. Digesting and handling millions of events and alerts daily, analyze and correlates event. So we could actually, A, focus on what's important for us to handle, and B, to design and trigger automated actions from identifying the root cause, troubleshooting to full remediation. So automation really critical across this entire process, from digesting the data, obviously using observability, doing all these event correlation, noise reduction with the help of AIOps, which also automate the process, and finally taking actions, immediate actions. So speed is crucial here to help IT operations to really act on problems and resolve problems immediately.
I believe we have, because you mentioned AI ops and you mentioned observability, and these are, I believe, very, very common tools. Everybody's using them right now in their IT environments. And I have a slide, I think, Gabby, that you just talked to, is how do you close the loop with automation?
Yeah, first, just anecdote about what you mentioned. I think AI ops is still in the process, which means I think there are more observability tools and monitoring tools which are already kind of matured and in place. I think AI ops is still have some time until it becomes more mature, as much at least as observability. So we see less AI ops capabilities, but I think we will see them in the future much more. Saying that, so yeah, with that, I believe most of the triggers and events we see today are coming from one or a few sources of events and alerts, talking about the AI ops, so like Big Panda and Muxoft, or observability tools such as SolarWinds and AppDynamics. Those are the ones that monitor, collect the data, digest it, crunch the data, and basically send us those kind of important events. So we at Resolve can basically digest them, parse them, and set the right workflow in order to process that resolution. So in this slide, we can see actually how we take a notification event. We trigger a workflow that then go and create a ticket in one of the ITSM tools, like ServiceNow, BMC, and others, and then start a diagnostic, troubleshoot it, and triage to really identify the root cause of a problem. So then we can actually take an action in order to remediate. If that's something that requires some human in the loop, this is something we can also notify, escalate, and ask even like an acknowledge for a human to response, and then we can take and complete the task. So everything is being gathered and collected and then pushed back to the service management tool. So all the data is documented. Every process is really kind of audited in order to see everything we are doing throughout the automated process. And finally, after a complete resolution, we will close the ticket, dismiss the alert, and close loop. So basically, we have the ability to take the event from the trigger to a full remediation, close loop completely, update all the kind of relevant records, and that's it. We can achieve that in seconds.
So if you're basically saying, if you're an on-call engineer or an SRE responsible to monitor, and you can get a good night's sleep.
And your boss as well.
Thank you, Gabby. I think that kind of visualizing that workflow was very powerful. Now, I want to bring us back to the topic of today, right? Which is,
low disk space.
Exactly, which is the low disk space. One of the main causes of outages is disk space, and something as simple as running out of disk space can cause databases and applications to stop working. And you said, you have firsthand experience with that. Can you throw some light on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you mentioned, although disk space issues are not that frequent as much as other issues in the data center, you would see more CPU memory issues than the disk space. But the moment disk space become an issue, it is and can cause a significant errors, like in applications, in servers, in databases. Failure to write a log file to operating system can actually take a server down. It can create spikes in CPUs and memory and stuff like that. So it can lead actually to a disaster. But it's easy and simple actually to handle. If you plan in advance, and obviously, you have probably hundreds, if not thousands of servers, virtual and physical. So you would like to automate a task that basically go and maintain those servers, keeping the disk space free. So rotating application logs, recycling application pool, doing some databases maintenance, like shrinking the log file. There are so many proactive activities that you can take with automation that you can't do it manually, that you can actually avoid from those failures. On the other hand, if that happens, then you have, as we discussed before, the ability to respond very quickly. So putting like an automated workflow that can handle free up disk space, expansion of a disk space, adding more resources to the server, doing all this kind of maintenance around the database, but also in a response way. So meaning that when something happened, you can respond quickly and basically remediate the problem. I believe we have a demo today to show exactly about that. So I don't want to hold on that one. So why don't we jump to that demo?
I believe, yeah, that's a great segue for us to kind of move to our next section. Derek, over to you.
All right, let's dive into the product here. So again, I want to just thank everybody for joining today. And those who followed along with our previous events in this series here on LinkedIn are familiar with what I have on my screen here, but just to cover it real quickly, this is the workflow designer inside of Resolve Actions Express, where you can actually go from, let's say, just a concept or an idea to a fully end-to-end automated process without writing a single line of code, or write as much code as you'd like. All right, our mantra is kind of low code, no code, bring your own code. And how do we achieve that? Well, firstly, it's through the visual designer that you see here on my screen, which is essentially like an actionable Visio diagram, right, with sophisticated logic. And the second component would be the huge library of pre-built integrations and activities and tasks and such that we have at our disposal. So you can see, for example, I've got nearly 1,700 of these individual activities imported to my instance here, but there are literally thousands more available on what we call our content exchange, which is something like an app store where you search for things, download them, import them, and get off to the races. And the way that these function, if we look at our menu here, is really supposed to be as simple as possible, right? That's the goal we set out to achieve. So say, for example, at some point during my automated process, I wanted to, let's say, create a issue inside of Jira or any ITSM. I could take that action from the menu, select my Jira instance, my project, my issue type, right? Everything is very visual, point and click, and nothing here requires me to peel back the layers, modify some YAML or some PowerShell or some Python. All of the pre-built turnkey integrations are very point and click and very intuitive. So as we talked about here today, we're going to be looking at this low disk space remediation example, and that's the workflow I have up on my screen. But before actually diving in and getting it going, I just wanted to cover a couple of things that we'll actually see during the demo. An alert will be generated inside of, in today's example, Big Panda, but it could be coming from virtually any observability, monitoring, AI ops tool. Resolve is going to intercept that alert, create a ticket inside of our ITSM, which in today's example will be ServiceNow, but as you guessed it could be anything. And then we're going to get to work doing things like eliminating false positive. We are going to do some initial info gathering. For example, this is a server hosted in VMware. How do we correlate the virtual disk with a drive letter mapped on our Windows server? So taking all of those steps, figuring out if the disk in fact does exceed a safe threshold, and then intelligently adding enough space to it, extending out the drive partition, and basically at the end looking to see, hey, do we have enough space left on this disk to keep the lights on? Escalate the ticket if we don't, get a human being involved, maybe clear out temporary files, Windows Update cache, oversized log files, whatever your SOP might dictate. And then of course, wrap up the whole ticket and resolve it if everything went to plan. And we'll even send a message to a dedicated Microsoft Teams channel for an extra layer of notification. So I'm actually simulating this outage right here in our lab. It's not even really a simulation, it's a real outage, but I say simulation because this poor sales engineering lab sees more outages a day than any organization ever should. And when I bring up this particular alert here inside of the Big Panda console, we'll actually watch as Resolve intercepts it in real time. So here we are inside of that Big Panda console, and very shortly we will see the actual incident or alert pop up right here. I'll switch back over to the Resolve side so we can watch how we intercept that alert and get to work. All right, so here's our alert. Here it is, low disk space on a particular disk. And now it's actually being pushed via webhook directly to Resolve. So as I said, I want to show you what that looks like. I'm going to our live dashboard where we can see certain high-level KPIs and metrics, as well as a live running snapshot of the system. And we can see here the Big Panda alert remediation workflows running. I can even drill down in the audit trail for a more granular view, live in real time, of everything the automation is doing from start to finish, right? So everything here is audited in great detail, can be exported to reports and such. And back over in the Big Panda side, we actually see that Resolve is posting bi-directional messages, right? Of eliminating swivel chairing. Somebody who spends their days inside the monitoring console can see Resolve pick this up. I can click a link to be taken directly to Resolve to take another look at seeing what the product's doing. Even a link posted for the ticket that we automatically created. So let's pull that ticket up, because this is where we're going to get a lot of good information. So we can see that when Resolve created this ticket, we automatically did things like link the configuration item, dynamically included the alert ID and affected host and all of that, pretty much what you'd expect. But down here in the work notes, we can actually see where Resolve eliminated this as a false positive, figured out that, well, we've only got just over 8% of the capacity of this disk free. We identified the drive letter in the particular virtual disk. We got to work adding, in this case, calculated out to be 2 extra gigs, right? I said here, this was a keep the lights on type of scenario. We just want to make sure the application is healthy enough. And after doing so and extending out the partition table, we've now got almost 35% free space. And the ticket was resolved right there before our eyes. We included all of our closure code information. And as I said, we posted this message to a channel inside of Microsoft Teams. We can see right here. So with our integrations inside of Resolve with things like Slack, Twilio, Office 365, Microsoft Teams, PagerDuty, any channel or form of communication that your team is using to be notified of alerts like this, or that needs to notify on-call folks, we can do that right within our product. And chances are we've already got your solution integrated and developed. So as I mentioned, everything in this workflow here built with 100% out-of-the-box content, whether we're talking about our ITSMs like ServiceNow, Sharewell, all the BMC offerings, Jira, Zendesk, whether we're talking about the virtualization or hypervisor platforms, right? Today we saw VMware, but we've also got GCP, Hyper-V, Office 365, Azure, or excuse me, Office 365, not virtualization, I meant to say Azure. And then of course, all of our notification bits here, the Microsoft Teams and such. And all of this can be found directly on Resolve's Automation Exchange or Content Exchange. So that wraps up the demo. Thank you, Brenda, for giving me a chance to show this really cool use case today.
Thank you, Derek. That was, I think that was very, very nicely done. It also kind of helps visualize everything that Gabby talked about in that slide, that whole workflow coming to life. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Derek, for taking the time to talk to me today. And for folks who found this interesting, we have our 7th automation next Thursday. So tune in, same time, where we will graduate to talk about network automation. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks, Brenda.
Bye.